Hello everybody, I'm Aaron Simmons. This is Philosophy for Where We Find Ourselves, April 11th, 2020. Now, were the world normal right now, we would be in the middle of a time of year where religious people around the world are celebrating a variety of traditions, festivals, and liturgies. We're a few days into Passover. Tomorrow is Easter. And so I thought this would be a pretty good time to think about what I consider the most misunderstood phrase in all of Western philosophy. And that is Friedrich Nietzsche's claim that God is dead. Now, in the churches I grew up in, this phrase, God is dead, was sufficient for getting raised eyebrows and usually a very critical response from those in the community. We've seen movies that came out several years ago that articulate God is not dead, as if the idea that God is dead were easy or simple to understand as just an atheistic rejection of something like Christianity. But this is a disastrous reading of a very complicated and I think critically valuable resource for religious life. In thinking about this, there are two thinkers in particular who have been resources that I've drawn on over the years in developing this view. One is Merold Westphal, whose book Suspicion and Faith talks about the way that atheists can actually be a resource for Christian thought. There's Bruce Ellis Benson, whose book Pious Nietzsche is a robust engagement of how to think about Nietzsche in a religious context. There are two ways of understanding Nietzsche's claim. On the one hand, we can read it as a metaphysical thesis, simply the affirmation that atheism is true and theism is false. On the other hand, we can read it as an epistemic thesis, which is about how we understand things, not the truth of what is being understood. If we go with the metaphysical reason, then what we do is actually force Nietzsche to be incoherent in his own thinking. Here's the incoherence. Nietzsche is a perspectivalist, which means that we cannot get outside of our perspectives to articulate the way truth is, but instead we have to live into the truth as we understand it in order for it to become activated in our lives. Now, as a perspectivalist, for Nietzsche to make an objectivist metaphysical claim about the falsity of theism is one step too far. He can't make such a claim even if he thinks atheism is true. To do that would actually force Nietzsche to assume what is called a God's eye view on the world. And yet, the God's eye view would be the view that then rejects such a God's eye view. That's an incoherent way to read Nietzsche. The coherent way to read Nietzsche, as articulated by Westphal and Benson and others, is that Nietzsche's conception of the death of God is actually a reminder of our hermeneutic responsibility, that we have work to do making sense of the world. And that includes making sense of our own religious commitments and faith traditions. So when Nietzsche says that God is dead, what he's doing is reminding us of the importance and the difficulty of ever being able to confuse our work, our view, with simply the view, God's understanding of reality. If we shift our perspective in this way, and we begin to appreciate that the death of God is actually a rejection of the idol of our own epistemic arrogance, if we confuse our church's account of God, say, for God's account of the church, we have now inverted the human perspective for the potential perspective of the divine. In doing so, what happens is we actively undercut what should be the humbling reality of living a life faithfully committed to the truth of God. So when Nietzsche says God is dead, he does not mean to suggest that it is false that there is a God. Instead, Nietzsche is simply inviting us to recognize that it is true that we are human. I continue to identify as a Pentecostal Christian. However, my identity as a Christian can often become the stumbling block that prevents me from being able to understand the criticisms that I need to remember. May we be open to the critique that erodes our own idolatry. If we do, we are more likely to remain faithful to the account of the religious traditions that we affirm, rather than thinking the only way to remain faithful to those traditions is to dismiss a thinker and an idea that actually causes us to interrogate ourselves. Thank you again for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day. I'll see you tomorrow unless a piano falls on our